What's up, guys, and welcome back to Beyond the Void Horror Podcast. My name is Alex, and today we're going to do a spoiler-free review of a movie that just came out on Shudder called Shook. And this one's going to be interesting. So, Shook just came out on Shudder for February 18th, and I decided to pop it on this morning and do a review of it. Now, I didn't really know too much about the movie other than what I read on IMDb, so I kind of went into this blind just to kind of experience it for what it is, and sometimes, that's like the best thing to do. So you have literally zero expectations, and you're just going to go and check it out. It didn't go too well. This movie is written and directed by Jennifer Harrington. This is her sophomore feature film. She had done another movie called Housekeeping. It was PG-13. I've never seen before. And she also had a co-writer by the name of Alicia Glidewell. So what is Shook? And did I get shook? The story of Shook is when Mia, a social media star, becomes the target of an online terror campaign, she has to solve a series of games to prevent people she cares about from getting murdered. But is it real? Or is it just a game at her expense? Mystery. So, I watched this today. I watched it with Christina, and I don't know how to explain this movie very well, and I don't want to just shit on it because there are some good things in it, but there was a lot of things in this movie that were really annoying. I've talked about this in many different movies, and one of the most important parts of destroying the cast is feeling for the cast. It is probably one of the more important things to me. Not only just know their backstory, which this movie does attempt and does, but also that you care for these characters that are put in these positions. Is it off bounds to do characters that you don't relate to and that you don't like very much? Of course not. But you sacrifice the connection of the viewer, in my opinion, to the movie that you're putting out. Now, this is a story about a lot of makeup and beauty and Instagram stars, these influencers who, on the day-to-day, they put on makeup just like they put on their personalities. Fake. So I had a really hard time kind of connecting with these particular characters or feeling bad for them at any given step. And when you figure out what's going on and who's behind the scenes doing it, to no surprise, I was even further bothered. Now, this movie takes itself very seriously, and there are some moments in the movie that I did feel like, oh, I don't want to see that. And that's all good things. Like, this movie is actually pretty well shot, and they use a lot of the modern technology that we use, considering that these are Instagram model stars or makeup tutorial people who do live showings and pictures all day long. It has to kind of embrace that culture, and this movie does a really good way of doing it in non-conventional ways on top of it. For example, there will be numbers literally projected onto some of the characters' faces or on the walls or on the TV behind them to kind of make you feel like you are a part of this modern culture, which is all great things. I think these are stylistically good choices to put into the movie. Where I think this movie suffers from is the story. One, like I mentioned before, I don't care about these characters. They have done nothing to warrant or elicit any kind of empathy from me whatsoever. These are not likable people that are very obviously fake, and it is sort of playing with that trope to make you understand a bigger picture. Like what is important in life and who you should be friends with and who's this. And, it's almost like if an Instagram star decided to make a Saw movie, which is kind of what it felt like, only not good. There are some things in the movie that are kind of shocking and, brutal at times, that make you kind of like, oh no, they're going to do that. But these are things that are pretty unbelievable that anybody would go through the trouble of doing. And it's really hard for me to kind of express this movie and the pitfalls of it without spoiling it. So I'm trying to dance around the subject. But let's just say The twisty story, the mystery that unveils itself is more annoying to me than it was enjoyable, despite all the obviously cool stylistic choices they chose to use modern day. It's all shot well. There are some fairly decent performances by the acting in it. I just think that this movie tanks 100% with the story, gets worse and worse the first two acts. The movie decides to go from serious to kind of jokey by the end of the movie, which tonally is going to piss some people off, I think. It does something different by the third act that just makes it kind of tonally all over the place, and I was not on board for it. It kind of decided to change and shift some of its narrative to almost a comedic performance or performances by the instigator and the victims, which became a little bit absurd. It just tanks bad by the end on top of it. And I'm trying to be as polite as possible by saying this. There are good things in the movie. It just annoyed me for more than like 70% of the movie. And I couldn't rationalize with the characters or the victims or anybody in this story to see this actually ever unfold. Now, does every movie have to be 100% based in reality? No. But if you're going to send the movie into serious reality right off the bat, then it kind of leads people to have expectations by the end. There were a couple of moments that were pretty cool as far as shocks go. There is a little bit of blood, but not graphic, just some interesting parts. Ultimately, I couldn't see giving this movie more than a 4 out of 10, probably a 3.5 for me. Sorry. I think that's being very considerate, and I think it's partially because some of the craftiness of some of the shots that they did in this movie that I did enjoy, and I thought were a good use of the camera, and I thought it was a good use in the movie. But ultimately, this movie is just kind of an empty vessel, no emotion, no soul, and it kind of feels like it just is. It's not a terrible movie. It has somewhat of a message, but I think it gets lost in some of the absurdness by the end. And I don't really know who it's rooting for either, which it's not that it had to tell me or even present the question to me, really. Just wasn't for me. But what did you guys think? Did you enjoy this movie? Have you seen it yet on Shudder? Were you disappointed with it, or did you love it? Definitely let me know what you think in the comment section down below. But other than that, thank you so much for coming by, and as always, long live the void.